Imagine watching your neighbor disappear in the dead of night, never to return. Picture streets once bustling with life now eerily silent, save for the occasional whisper of families trading heirlooms for a single loaf of bread. This wasn't war, this was worse. This was the Holodomor, Stalin's manufactured apocalypse that claimed 7 million lives in just 2 years. Yet, for decades, the world never knew. In 1932, while Hollywood was dazzling audiences with glamorous films, and America was beginning to recover from the Great Depression, a horror beyond imagination was unfolding in Ukraine. Soviet officials were systematically seizing grain from starving peasants, leaving behind ghost towns and mass graves that Stalin would spend his remaining years desperately trying to erase from history forever. The year was 1929 when Stalin unveiled his master plan, forced collectivization. Peasants who had farmed their ancestral lands for generations were suddenly declared enemies of the state if they resisted handing over their property. What followed wasn't just policy failure, it was calculated genocide disguised as agricultural reform, targeting Ukraine's independent spirit and cultural identity. By 1932, the nightmare had begun. Soviet agents swept through Ukrainian villages like locusts, confiscating not just grain, but seeds, livestock, and even kitchen utensils used for food preparation. Families watched helplessly as soldiers loaded their last hope onto trucks bound for Moscow's granaries. The message was crystal clear: submit completely or face absolute starvation as punishment. What makes this tragedy even more chilling is that grain was rotting in Soviet warehouses, while children collapsed from hunger in the streets below. Stalin continued exporting wheat to Western nations, maintaining the illusion of agricultural success while secretly ordering the blockade of affected regions. No food could enter. No refugees could leave. Ukraine became a giant open-air prison camp. The Western world remained shockingly oblivious. Stalin's propaganda machine worked overtime, hosting carefully orchestrated tours for foreign journalists who saw only staged prosperity. Meanwhile, desperate parents were making impossible choices: which child to feed with their last crumb of bread. Knowing that decision meant condemning the others to slow, agonizing death by malnutrition and disease. Cannibalism became commonplace as moral boundaries dissolved under extreme desperation. Mothers ate their own children to survive. Neighbors turned against neighbors in a hellish competition for scraps. The social fabric that had held communities together for centuries unraveled completely, replaced by a primitive struggle where humanity itself became negotiable in the face of absolute starvation. Stalin's cover-up was masterful and methodical. Mass graves were filled and disguised as construction projects. Survivors were relocated or silenced permanently. Official documents were altered or destroyed entirely. For decades, even mentioning the Holodomor could result in imprisonment or death. The Soviet Union successfully convinced the world that this industrialized genocide had never occurred. But truth has a way of surfacing. After Stalin's death, whispers began emerging from behind the Iron Curtain. Survivors who had lived through the nightmare started sharing their testimonies with underground networks. Smuggled photographs revealed the horrifying reality: the entire villages reduced to skeletal remains, streets littered with bodies, and mass burial sites stretching beyond the horizon. The psychological warfare was just as devastating as the physical starvation. Stalin deliberately chose Ukraine because of its history of resistance to Soviet control. This wasn't random agricultural mismanagement, this was a calculated attempt to break the Ukrainian national spirit forever. By targeting farmers, Stalin attacked the very heart of Ukrainian cultural identity and independence movements. International recognition came painfully slowly. For decades after World War II, the Holodomor remained hidden beneath Cold War politics and Soviet denials. It wasn't until Ukraine gained independence in 1991 that survivors could finally speak openly about their experiences. Their testimonies revealed a systematic campaign of terror that exceeded even the horrors of concentration camps in its calculated brutality. The evidence was overwhelming once investigators gained access to Soviet archives. Detailed records showed Stalin's inner circle debating how much starvation was acceptable to achieve political goals. They calculated death tolls like budget figures, discussing whether 5 million or 10 million deaths would be sufficient to crush Ukrainian nationalism forever. Human lives reduced to mere statistics in spreadsheets. Modern forensic investigations have uncovered mass graves containing thousands of bodies across Ukraine. Archaeologists work carefully to identify remains while survivors, now in their 90s, point out locations where they remember seeing trucks dump bodies during the worst months of 1932 to 1933. Each excavation reveals new evidence of the systematic nature of this state-sponsored mass murder campaign. The international community's response remains controversial. Many Western nations have officially recognized the Holodomor as genocide, but Russia continues to deny its deliberate nature, claiming it was merely agricultural mismanagement affecting the entire Soviet Union equally. This denial perpetuates the very cover-up Stalin began, preventing full historical acknowledgement and justice for victims. Today, Ukraine commemorates Holodomor Remembrance Day every November, lighting candles for the millions who died in silence and darkness. Museums display haunting artifacts, tiny shoes from children who never grew up, farming tools seized by Soviet agents, and letters written by dying families pleading for help that never came. These memorials ensure that Stalin's attempt to erase history has ultimately failed. The lessons of the Holodomor extend far beyond Ukrainian borders. This tragedy demonstrates how easily authoritarian regimes can weaponize basic human needs like food to control populations. It shows how international indifference enables mass atrocities to continue unchecked. Most importantly, it proves that without vigilant protection of historical truth, even genocides can be successfully hidden for decades. As we face modern challenges of food security, climate change, and political authoritarianism, the Holodomor serves as a stark warning. When governments control food distribution, they control life itself. When international communities choose political convenience over human rights, millions can die in silence. The price of forgetting history is being condemned to repeat its darkest chapters in new forms. The truth Stalin tried to bury has finally emerged from the shadows, but only because brave survivors refused to let their families' sacrifices be forgotten. Subscribe to our channel to discover more hidden histories that powerful forces tried to erase. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our investigations into the secrets they don't want you to know. Your subscription helps us keep digging for truth. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.